strong.
Chapter 181, Choose. Lulan Palace, Ye Fuxian and his entourage stood behind Hyfengdiao and looked at the battlefield in the distance. Li Doin was stronger than they had imagined. He actually killed not far from the palace. Many people died under his sword. The ancient country of Lulan had absolute authority and control in Lulan city, but that was for the cities around Lulan city. In terms of, for Li Doin, who was from a top force in the eastern wasteland, it was clear he didn't care much about the ancient country of Lulan. Did Lulan not dare to send the strong to kill her ancestor? As for the ancient world, he didn't even care. There were many corpses lying on the ground, but Li Doin couldn't move after all. Lulan Palace is located here. Of course, there was no need to say anything. At this time, the people who were dealing with Li Doin formed a terrible battle, and hit him several times. Doin stood there, looked up, and looked at Ye Fuxian in the distance. Their sharp eyes looked like a hint of sarcasm, and a voice spat out in his mouth, "This is your life." If it was King Lulan's palace, Ye Fuxian wouldn't even want to survive. Unfortunately, the treasure was not taken. He turned and left like this, arrogant to the extreme. "What's your name and where are you from?" Ye Fuxian suddenly asked. Li Daoyun's steps stagnate, then he turned his head and fell on Ye Fuxian's body. The irony in the corner of his eye seems to be stronger. Can this man still want to find him to take revenge? The world has always been like this. After being insulted, they always like to dream of one day being able to take revenge and be ashamed, but they don't understand that this is an illusory and beautiful vision. In fact, often there is only one revenge ending, namely, death. Fuyun Janzong Li Doin, you remember. Li Daoyun's voice came out and fell into everyone's eardrums. His tone was a bit disdainful, as if he was belittling Ye Fuxian. Those who had heard of Fuyun Janzong's name in Gulu Lingu state were shocked and speechless. This time, Lulan Guguo was killed by the other party, but it was difficult to report revenge. Li Doin left this sentence and left. He didn't care about Ye Fuxian's thoughts. He was just a little disappointed. He didn't get the treasure that Ye Fuxian got, but he didn't really care. This is from the East Wasteland. Confidence from the top squad. Fuyun Janzong, Li Doin. Ye Fuxian muttered, repeating his name. Similarly, he didn't care about Li Daoyun's humiliation and contempt. He and Li Doin had the same idea. In Li Daoyun's view, if he was going to take revenge, the end would only be death. But in Ye Fuxian's opinion, when he said Fuyun Jianzong Li Daoyun's words, he was already dead. The strong people of the ancient kingdom of Lulu had stepped forward and greeted their servant, Lulanzu. "Come on." Ye Fuxian turned around and walked towards the palace. Lulan's many strong men followed behind, of course they had to see them. Behind black wind carving, Ye Fuxian seemed to have been meditating for a long time before whispering, "But if I give the treasures to them earlier?" He handed the treasure book to the strong man in the desert city. Can Ye Wuxian's arm continue? Don't think too much. Ye Wuxian looked wide and calmly said, "Give the treasure book to the people of the desert city in front of the girl, you can guarantee that the ancient country of Lulan will not abandon you." Ye Fuxian didn't say anything. "I returned to the palace where I lived before." Ye Fuxian took out a treasure book. A cold breath still permeated. The scroll of the book was as cold as before, and cold to the bone marrow. Except for the chilling will and chilly mood, this book doesn't seem too special. Did half of this book inherit this frozen willpower? So what's in the rest of the book? He was a little curious. The 2 volumes of treasure books were complete only when they were combined. There was a rumor that the queen of the ancient kingdom Lulan revived Lulan based on half of the treasure book. Although such rumors could not be completely believed, he would not have thought that someone without talent relying solely on treasures could become the queen of the ancient kingdom of Lulan. Of course, the role of treasure books could not be ignored. Since the ancient Lulan kingdom attaches so much importance to the other parts of the volume, it is also quite extraordinary. After a while, Lu Langxiu brought people back to Ye Fuxian's palace. "What conditions do you want?" Lu Langxiu stood in front of Ye Fuxian, still cold, and asked directly. "I want to borrow half of the book." Ye Fuxian looked at Lu Langxiu and said, "Of course, if the girl doesn't agree, I can consider changing other conditions." Previously, Lu Langguo said that he traded with half the volume of books, and only borrowed half of the books. In fact, he lost money, but Lu Langguo may not agree, and he will not force it. He was safe after being protected by Lu Langguo, and was not qualified to discuss conditions. "I have to go and ask the Queen of Heaven." Lu Langxiu said, half of the volume of the book, she couldn't decide. Well, you can take half this book first. Ye Fusion handed the books to the girl, and Lu Langxiu's eyes flashed a strange color, but they still took them. Ye Fusion did this naturally to show his attitude, otherwise, if he thought that he was threatening him, he would be in danger again. It's best to see other parts of the book. If you don't see it, change it to something else. Provision, you are waiting for my news here. Lu Langxiu spoke and turned around. Immediately after the girl left, someone came again, but their Qian Yang, before them also lived in the opposite palace. Ye Fusion, Qian Yang stepped forward and showed a smile to Ye Fusion, looking somewhat friendly, and said, this time you were invited to enter the ancient ruins of Lulan, and the harvest is not small. Some advantages, but also pay a lot. Ye Fusion said. Qian Yang glanced at Ye Wuchen's broken arm next to him, and said, I heard that you also got the most sought after book in the Lulan ancient country. I must have proposed a treasure exchange with the girl. I will bring you here. Lulan ancient ruins said earlier that if there were treasures, what are your plans now? Qian Yang looked at Ye Fusion. Before people searched for the book, he left and went to Tikarazuka, but when he arrived, all of Tikarazuka's instruments were taken. That is, this time during the visit to the Lulan ancient ruins, he did not find anything. Unlike him, Ye Fusion, they are full of harvest. At first, the three of them took one weapon from the soldier's grave. Then, even the most important treasures in the ruins were obtained, as well as the Book of Fire. They do not know. Treasure, you can imagine his mood, how could he not know? Points. Ye Fusion and others looked at Qian Yang and others. The rest of his life looked very cold, and said coldly, where is your face? Before they entered the ruins, they did not tell them about the ancient ruins, and the danger was never mentioned. They just want to use it. In the eyes of Qian Yang, even if they get treasures, they are Qian Yang. As for the fall of the ancient ruins, naturally irrelevant, what does it have to do with Qian Yang? Clean your mouth. Shitong opened his mouth coldly and glanced at the tomahawk for the rest of his life, which was the magic weapon he wanted. When we took the treasure, did the master of the lead play a role? Ye Fusion asked with a smile. Zhao Qianyang's eyes lit up, and Zhao Ha beside him said coldly, without Qian Shao, you don't have the qualifications to enter the Lulan ruins. Now you want to swallow the treasure alone. Wants the sword in Ye Wuchen's hand. Now, the will in these instruments has disappeared, and they don't need to be recognized anymore. As long as they got it, it was theirs. Ye Fusion looked at Zhao Ha, knew that there was no need to argue, and smiled, yes. Since you said it was solo, it was solo. Are you thinking clearly? Qian Yang looked at Ye Fusion, his face still smiling. Thinking very clearly. Ye Fusion and Qian Yang looked at each other. Although the harvest of the ancient ruins is not small, Ye Wuchen has already broken an arm. These people want to share the treasures directly. Joke. I will live opposite, you can think about it, maybe you will change your mind. Qian Yang smiled and then turned to leave. Zhao Ha Shitong coldly swept over Ye Fusion and others. Yu Linglong smiled gently wrote, isn't it in the ruins after coming out? Even if I have the prince's weapon, without the prince's help how much power I can play with. In the ancient ruins, there is a will of the prince in each artifact using their power to urge them to use the artifact naturally. There is no need to say more about the power, but at this time, the artifact is finally it's just a magic weapon. The people who use it are strong, but Ye Fusion's realm is not high. Yanqing Mo. At this time, Qian Yang suddenly turned to Ye Fusion and said, you are also thinking clearly. Jin Yanqingmo's body shook, Zhao Han's eyes turned to look at him, there was a sense of indifferentness in his eyes, and then he left here. At this moment, I saw the struggle in Yun Qianmo's eyes. He saw Ye Fusion's talent in his eyes, it can be said that the talent of this group of people is above Qian Yang. If he continued to follow Ye Fusion's training, it would be of great help to him. But now, Ye Fusion and them might collide with Qian Yang. Qian Yang was the leader of the Young League. Zhao Ha was his master's son. He couldn't stand on opposite sides of each other. What's more, Ye Fusion although their talent is strong, but they have a relic, how can they fight against other people? Ye Fusion looked back at Yanqing Mo, and seemed to see the struggle in his eyes, and said lightly, if you want to leave, I can let go. Jin Yanqing looked into Ye Fusion's eyes as if making a decision, and said, I can't stand on the opposite side of them. Ye Fusion looked at Yanqing Mo with a calm look. Although Yanqing Mo was not very talented, he was very decisive. When she chose to be his maid, she could see that now she had made her own judgments and choices again. The rest of his life seemed a bit cold to Yanqing Mo. At this time, Ye Fusion walked past Yanqing Mo and said lightly, for the rest of my life, take his luck and let him go. Chapter 182, The Sage Will. Deprivation of luck was an extremely cruel thing. Destroying the will of the other party with one's own will was the same as retreating from the kingdom. But Ye Fuxian still let the rest of his life do this, ignoring Yun Qianmo's eyes with a hint of hatred. After all, people have to pay for their own choices. Originally, if Yun Qianmo agreed to serve him, he couldn't force Yun Qianmo. This is a voluntary thing. Then Yun Qianmo also did his job. He will help wherever he can. Yun Qianmo, Kangshan ruins, Wanghao grottos, Yun Qianmo have gained a lot of benefits. Now, Qianyang and Zhao Ha had made it clear that they wanted to be their enemies. In short, Yun Qianmo will leave like this. How could there be such a simple thing? After returning, he is a member of Yu Jianzong, Zhao Han's sister, and then deals with them. Even if Yun Qianmo waited until the storm was over and chose to leave, Ye Fuxian would not take his luck, but at this moment, Ye Wuchen broke his arm, and he chose to rebel in a crisis. You can imagine Ye Fuxian's mood. Jin Yun Qianmo left after being stripped of his luck, and he did not fight back. Ye Wuchen was able to escape from Li Doin and prove his strength. Even though he had paid the price of a broken arm, it was still not something he could handle. Qian Yang, who had the luck of the prince, could suppress it. Jin Yun Qianmo didn't know that Ye Wuchen not only ran away, but also injured Li Doin. He also did not know that Ye Fuxian won the treasure book in the ruins, and the prince of the king, not because of the will hidden in the instrument, or because of luck, but by a stronger will, but a secret that only Ye Yichen saw when he arrived. Ye Fuxian asked for the rest of his life to take them to the palace. Obviously, he didn't want to reveal the secret to them. A lifetime later understood Ye Fuxian's intentions. After Jin Yun Qianmo left, Ye Fuxian practiced quietly waiting for the news from Lu Langxiu. Diolo Langyo, Royal Palace. The real Lulan Palace, not an ancient kingdom. The majestic ancient palace was simple, clean, and not luxurious. A middle-aged woman, wearing a white robe, sat silently in the ice formation, her gaze staring at her, where there was a chilling chill that permeated. It was exactly 2 books. The treasure books gradually became one. His spiritual will penetrated into the treasure book, and he only felt a chill hidden in it, like the will of a sage, which was extremely terrifying. Sage. Yes. At this moment, a voice in his mind reminded me of a treasure book. After days of shaking, the heart trembled, and the rumors were indeed true. The 2 books belonging to Lu Langyo contained the will of the sage, and they were sealed with books, and those who won them won the world. I hear Lulan. The voice of the will sounded again. Sage, I am a descendant of Lulan, said Tianhao. Very few people know about this. The world only knows that when a peerless girl is born with a precious book and revives Lulan, it is known as Tianhao, but in fact, Tianhao this is the descendant of Jiu Lulan. Each subsequent generation of virgins is actually the daughter of Tianhao, and then inherits the position of Tianhao, continuing the blood of Gulu. There was a moment of silence in Bao Bo's book, and then a voice came out, and the queen listened quietly. After a long time, he put the book away, looked outside the hall, and shouted, Lu Langxiu. Outside, a beautiful figure walked slowly, white hair, white eyes, and she bent down and shouted, Queen. The person in front of him was not only the queen of Lu Langyo, but also his mother. Bring me here. Tianhao looked at Lu Langxiu and said, I will borrow the treasure book to take a look. Yes. Lu Langxiu left. King Lulu's palace is connected to the ancient kingdom, and the entrance is in the royal palace, so Lu Langxiu immediately entered the ancient royal palace and found Ye Fuxian. I will meet you the day after tomorrow, let you go to Lulan Palace, and promise you. Lu Langxiu said to Ye Fuxian. Ye Fuxian's eyes flashed, and he wanted to meet him later. Okay. Ye Fuxian nodded, then said for the rest of his life, I will go out, you wait for me. He said, he left with Lu Langxiu, and the sharp man and a group of guards were also around. They were a little curious. Why did you see Ye Fuxian after that day? Ye Fuxian followed Lu Langxiu through the ancient channel, and found that she had come to the majestic ancient palace. The real King Lulan Palace was so powerful that he occupied the ancient channel alone. In order to enter the ancient world, the Lulan royal family nodded. The original Lulan Palace was naturally more grand and majestic than the imperial palace. A strange atmosphere, Ye Fuxian, they came to the great hall, left and right, there were guards and strong hands everywhere, and on the stairs stood a peerless figure. The extraordinary temperament, despite being a woman, still reveals the meaning of a king. Meet the Queen of Heaven. People bowed to worship, and the queen's eyes fell on Ye Fuxian, turned around, walked towards the main hall, and said, Lu Langxiu brought him in. Yes. Lu Langxiu nodded, then carried Ye Fuxian up the stairs and walked towards the main hall. This hall is empty and clean, and there is an ice formation in front of it, a cold air is coming out of it, and a treasure book is floating in the ice formation at this moment, releasing a strong cold. I heard that you obtained a treasure book with the cultivation of the first level of the lore realm, and killed many princes. How did you do that? Tianhao stood in front of the Fa, opening his back to Ye Fusion. Fortunately, I almost died. Ye Fusion said. After Fusion naturally heard that Ye Fusion didn't say anything, he didn't ask, he just said, this is the place where I cultivate, the treasure book is here, and you can practice here for a while. Thank you, Lord, Ye Fusion said. This is what you deserve. Tianhao said faintly, and then turned around, his eyes also sparkled with silver, and those eyes seemed to want to see Ye Fusion pass by. After a while, he lifted his leg and headed outside, saying, let's go. Lanlu Langxiu naturally understood that he told her that after seeing Ye Fusion, he followed Tianhu's footsteps. If I practice for a long time, tell my friends. Ye Fusion said. Okay, Lu Langxiu replied. Tianhao and Lu Langxiu left, Ye Fusion sat in the ice formation practiced by Tianhu, the coldness of the water around him permeated the whole body, Ye Fusion's mind moved, and the power of cold air rushed into the body. Behind him, a cold phase appeared, absorbing this cold, the magic circle ran, and his body was buried in the cold like fog. Great freedom to watch the idea run, Ye Fusion looked at the book in the void, and saw the book, the atmosphere is still the same, the cold moon, the snow mountain, the frozen world, above the snow mountain, can faintly see the body covered in snow, the figure, quietly sitting on top of a snow-covered mountain. This. Ye Fusion was quite surprised. The previous image does not appear in this scene. Now the complete treasure book was born, and there was something more in the scrolls. The idea of beyond's freedom was motivated to the extreme, Ye Fusion seemed to feel the suction, his consciousness even entered the treasure book and came to the vast snowy mountains. It's cold. Ye Fusion shivered, the cold moon hung high, and the figure on the snow-covered mountain peak sat quietly, and Ye Fusion's conscious body went towards him. The figure slowly turned around, looked at Ye Fusion, he smiled and said, I didn't expect you to actually get in here. This is the space where the will of the predecessors is. Ye Fusion asked curiously. Let's consider it this way, unfortunately, after you are not Lulan, the treasure book still remains in Lulan, but since you were able to come here, naturally you can't let yourself be wasted. This figure slowly turned into his eyes. With white, those white eyes are very scary. Just for a moment, Ye Fusion felt an ancient character float into his mind. His consciousness was crazily absorbed, but every ancient character seemed to contain a terrifying chill. To freeze his consciousness. Similar to the Book of Fire, isn't the Book of Fire also a book of the same level? Ye Fusion's heart shook and saw the figure in front of him. A long time ago, the flame technique lost its inner soul and there was no sage. The figure replied and said that the endless cold ancient words entered Ye Fusion's consciousness. For a long time, his consciousness turned into an ice sculpture. Tilde then broke and disappeared. Outside, in the circle, Ye Fusion was still sitting there quietly, covered in a layer of ice, motionless. Time passed day by day, there was no movement in the ice circle. Goddess Lu Langxiu had visited several times, each time the same. Today, he came again. After Tianshan stood quietly outside the front of the circle, seeing Ye Fusion's figure, he was quite shocked inside. Jian Zhangxian didn't guess wrong. Ye Fusion was able to tap into the potential of more treasures than any descendant of the Lulan royal family. Unfortunately, she wasn't Lulan. Let's go. After a while, he left. A few days later, horrendous movements emerged from the circle, hot air flowed, Ye Fusion's ice sculpture melted slightly, and then a terrible breath erupted. There was a vision behind Ye Fusion, the cold sun and moon hung down, alternately cold and hot, and turned into a terrible typhoon, the aura around him made a gurgling sound. Under the sun, there is a sea of fire, and under the cold moon, glaciers are born. This is the legal phase. Today, Ye Fusion has condensed another Fa phase, and the atmosphere of the cold moon phase is even stronger than the sun phase that was born before. Sun, moon, water and fire, Ye Fusion muttered. The ancient sage of ancient Lulan practiced not only the ability to practice the ice attribute, but also the practice of fire, but then, the sage in the fire book disappeared, causing the gradual loss of fire talent. Chapter 183, Queen's Rage. Lulan Palace, Tianhaoxing Palace. At this time, Tianhao was sitting quietly in the Xingong ancient pavilion, beside him, Lu Langxiu was standing there like a statue. What do you think of him? At this time, Tianhao suddenly asked. Gao Lanlangxiu's silver eyes flickered, and after glancing at the sky, she was confused. Ye Fusion, said the next day. Talent is very good, Lu Langxiu said softly. Except talent. God asked again. Lulanzu's eyelashes moved lightly, still not understanding her mother's meaning. Seeing Lu Langxiu's eyes, Tianhao secretly said that this princess really doesn't know anything about the world. He looked at the pond next to the ancient pavilion and whispered softly, "It looks good too, and it is difficult to find a handsome person in the palace. And talent is also good. Although younger, age is never a problem in the world of practice, do you think?" Shi Lulanzu's silver pupils gradually grew bigger, and her beautiful eyes flashed a strange look. At this moment, he naturally understood the meaning of his mother. "I didn't think about it." Lu Langxiu's voice remained cold. "It's not too late to consider now." Tianhao slowly turned his eyes and fell on Lu Langxiu, saying, "Sooner or later, it is necessary to consider. Now when I find a match, if I miss it, it might be hard to find a better one." Gao Lanlanzu looked into Tianhu's eyes, it seemed reasonable. The first order phase of the law realm carried a treasure book in hand, and the mother also told him that Ye Fusion could communicate with the sage in the treasure book. Naturally, there is no need to say much, and the value is very high. This is indeed a very suitable candidate. After seeing Lu Langxiu thinking after that day, she continued, "If you don't choose it this time, there will be someone else in the future, you think clearly." Yun Lu Lanzumi's eyes thought for a moment, then she nodded gently, "Okay." The promise he made was simple, as if it were to him not a lifetime event, but more like a chore. As Tianhu said, sooner or later, there must be such a person, and his impression of Ye Fusion is really good, and it looks more pleasing to the eye. There he is. There was a smile in Tianhu's eyes. She is naturally clear about her daughter's temperament, and she views everything very lightly, as her temperament shows. It must be the same for love. Short contact of course can't talk about deep feelings, but knows how to make good choices. Ye Fusion was indeed a good choice. Queen. At this time, a servant came and said, "He's out." Exactly, Tianhao smiled and said, "Invite him to come here." The servant girl was a little surprised, and the queen even asked Ye Fusion to come to her palace. No human has ever been treated like this. Even though he was scared, he still held him and carried him away. It didn't take long for Ye Fusion to be brought here. Seeing Tianhu and Lu Langxiu in front of him, like sisters, they are both cold beauties, but Tianhu's beauty is majestic and dares not be dirty. Lu Langxiu has silver eyes. Beautiful and devil. The younger generation has seen the day after tomorrow, Ye Fusion saluted. Nodding calmly, the eyes looked at Ye Fusion. "How is spiritual practice?" "Zhu Wei has made some progress, thank you for your success." Ye Fusion thanked him, wondering why he asked him to come here. The palace where Tianhu and the girl lived was not a place where he should set foot. "You deserve it," Tianhu said casually. "How does that girl look?" Ye Fusion froze and blinked. How was the situation? He looked at Lu Langxiu next to him, standing cold and calm, like a statue. Naturally very beautiful. Ye Fusion nodded. This is the truth, he has always been honest. In the ancient country of Lulan, the girl is very outstanding in appearance and talent, and it is difficult to have someone comparable, Tianhao himself exaggerated. See, Ye Fusion's mind changed. What did Tianhao say to him? Because of this, it is difficult for a man in Lulan to become a saint. After seeing Ye Fusion, he said, "The events of his lifetime have given me a headache." See, Ye Fusion did not dare to answer, and a very ridiculous thought appeared in his mind. Isn't that the mess on her face? What do you think about this? Tianhu's eyes fell on Ye Fusion's body with a smile on his face. That junior doesn't dare to talk much about such a big event. Ye Fusion lowered his head with a bad feeling. See, Tianhao smiled and looked at Ye Fusion. Is this person pretending to be stupid with him? He said very clearly that he didn't say anything, but he had to take the initiative to say it. Kid really is a thief. If I had the girl for you, what would you think? The queen said quietly, in a relaxed tone. But Ye Fusion was tight throughout, more nervous than Wang Hojun in the ruins battle scene. Now he is in someone else's palace, and he says he will assign the girl to him, but imagine how much pressure he must have. How do I deserve to be a virgin? Ye Fusion said politely. His voice dropped, an invisible pressure fell on his body, and he only felt a little cold, which was the Tianhao airfield. I said you deserve it, of course there will be no problem. Tianhao said, this brat, dare to say no. Ye Fusion was slightly dumbfounded. His brain was moving rapidly, and he said, Junior and that girl have just met each other and have never touched them at all. Isn't it too embarrassing for the girl to be in such a hurry? Mei Lulanzume looked at him calmly and said, I have no opinion. Ye Fusion is completely speechless, and he doesn't have to be so direct to look handsome, right? Since I came to you, I naturally asked him, you don't need to think about other things. Tianhao looked at Ye Fusion and said, I will choose a good day, tell the world, marry another day, what do you think? Not day after day. Ye Fusion's complexion changed, and Siyu was still waiting for him in the Kangye kingdom. How could he possibly marry another woman outside? After Fen Tian frowned, a true majestic breath appeared in his body, falling on Ye Fusion. That junior has a beloved woman. Ye Fusion saw that it was impossible to be euphemistic, so he had to tell the truth. Can a sage be so good? Tian, who was stunned, then said coldly, he assigned Lu Langxiu to Ye Fusion, but he didn't want to back down to prevent it. As a queen, she felt unhappy. Queen, this is not a matter of good or bad. Ye Fusion said, in his mind, naturally, Siyu is better, but this is definitely not saying. After Fusion looked at Ye Fusion, he saw Ye Fusion's stubbornness in his eyes, and he looked at him with a degree of unwillingness to give up. The breath of majesty disappeared in his body, and Tianhao said again, since then, let her be a room for him. Let Shiyu be the room. Yan Ye Fusion looked up at the sky and shook his head. After Bian Tian frowned more tightly, his eyes stared at Ye Fusion, and said coldly, don't you want the girl to be a room? He has given Fu Ye Fusion face, if it is not a sage who values it, why would he do this to a junior? But the boy looked toast and didn't eat. Then I will kill him. Tianhao said coldly. His voice dropped, Ye Fusion's eyes suddenly sharpened, and he stabbed into the sky like a sword, his fists were slightly gripped, and he tried to contain his anger. I seemed to feel a change in Ye Fusion. The queen's breath grew colder, and the space around her seemed to freeze and freeze. For a while, the atmosphere in this space descended to freezing, extremely cold. Lanlu Langxiu did not expect this situation, she looked at the two in front of her and said, he did not agree. When he heard Lu Langxiu's anger, not only was there no news, but the coldness was also slightly stronger, he personally offered his daughter a proposal and offered to share it with Ye Fusion, but he was rejected. Now when he heard Lu Langxiu's words, he only felt that the girl was being mistreated. Come on, said the queen coldly, and several women came blinking. Take note of this jerk, optimistic, Tianhao ordered coldly. Yes. The digital woman stepped forward. I will go alone. Ye Fusion turned and lifted his leg to leave, and several women followed. Crazy. The queen is angry, this bastard. You appreciated her talent before you thought about marrying me and wanting her to be Lulan. But now, wouldn't that offend her? Lu Langxiu is calmer, although it feels strange, the mother will he promised Ye Fusion, and he said he agreed. But unexpectedly, rejected. Then just kill it. Tian Hu said coldly, what can be done with his talent, he gave up, let him marry too, but the jerk is good, then he refuses directly, wants Lu Langxiu to be a room. Still think that Lu Langxiu doesn't deserve it. Why is this necessary, didn't you say that the sage valued him? Lu Langxiu suggested. Wu Tianhu's anger gradually dissipated, after all he was out of breath, it was related to his only daughter, who had proactively agreed to be ignored by Ye Fusion. As a queen, you can imagine her mood. I'll ask a sage. After a flash of his body, he left the side. It didn't take long before he came to the ancient temple of spiritual practice and sat in the ice formation. Qi Baoshu was still floating in the air, and the consciousness of the Queen of Heaven entered into it. After a while, the eyes opened again, revealing a strange look. Zhang lifted his steps and walked outside. After a while, he came to another place where Ye Fusion was under house arrest. Ye Fusion was being watched at the moment, and he was also not happy when he saw the day after. Diolo Langxiu is very beautiful, but what about beauty? Will he get married? What do you think? Tianhao went to Ye Fusion and asked. His tone was calmer, without anger when Ye Fusion left earlier. I don't understand the meaning of day to day, Ye Fusion said. Before you left, I really wanted to kill you, but the girl asked you. Tianhao said. Thanks girl for me. Ye Fusion's tone was slightly cold. I will take a step back, regardless of the wife and concubine. Tianhao said. Don't get married. Ye Fusion said calmly. P.S. I slept for 3 hours yesterday, and then flew back from Beijing. I just wrote the code directly. Sorry for the update. I said it on a public account yesterday. You can pay attention to public accounts without a trace. The trail is fine, and there will be a notification in it if there is a situation. Chapter 184, One Person One Sword. Ye Fuxian's resolute refusal made the queen's easing complexion instantly turn cloudy again. This was not the case. His Majesty, his daughter Lu Langxiu is very talented, and no one can stand side by side in the ancient country, and beg to be rejected. Now, he even agrees that his daughter can serve with other women, but he is still rejected. Isn't he worthy of you? He Hao said coldly. If not for the sage, he really wanted to slap the person in front of him. You should know that girl doesn't have any feelings for me. This kind of thing can be so ordinary. Ye Fuxian looked at Tianhu and said, because the girl is beautiful. If so, I will be beautiful in the future. Aren't you going to get married? Emotions can be cultivated slowly. When you are together later, you will naturally like the girl. Tianhu said, this asshole is pretending to be tall in front of him. What do men see? I then became used to Lu Langxiu by her side, and didn't believe that she wouldn't change her heart. From Tianhu's perspective, it was naturally impossible for Ye Fuxian's favorite person to have his daughter. Although the younger generation doesn't know why the queen wants to marry the girl with the younger generation, I do have a boyfriend and have a good relationship. If Tianhu values the younger's talent, I have gained something from the ancient ruins of Lulan. China must also meet a sage, and willing to be friends with Lu Langguo. Why was the queen forced to marry me as a wife? Ye Fuxian said, although he asked himself that his face value was very high, it was definitely not because of his face value, but because of his talent that he wanted to win over him. Now I have to bow my head under the roof. After looking at Tian Fuxian, the jerk is really smart. He naturally understands Ye Fuxian's words. However, Ye Fuxian will soon be training in the ancient world. He is not from the ancient country of Lulan. How reliable is that so-called friendship? I owe him a favor. This was clearly not what he wanted. That sage means Ye Fuxian hopes to become a man in the ancient country of Lulan. Because he has a very valuable talent and let his daughter marry him, this relationship can firmly lock Ye Fuxian. After Lu Langxiu had her flesh and blood, where else could she go? In this way, Lulan's bloodline could be better inherited. But he never thought about it before. Ye Fuxian would refuse. Seeing Ye Fuxian, the queen thought for a moment, and her voice became soft again, and said, since this is the case, I am not forcing you, I am too extreme, but you are too stupid, but holy, but still you some people like it. If you have more contact, maybe you will change your mind later and follow me. He said, turned around and headed for his palace. Thank you, Lord. Ye Fuxian followed him. After that day, he froze coldly, scolding Ye Fuxian in his heart. He really wanted to hurt Flat Leaf Fuxian. Ye Fuxian looked at the back of the Empress, and inwardly also scolded the old woman for changing her face so quickly, and only hated that she was not strong enough, otherwise she would severely slap the old woman. He was in the palace the next day, and when Ye Fuxian saw Lu Langxiu, he remained calm and cold, as if nothing had happened. Maybe he was such a character. I glanced at Tianhao and Ye Fuxian, and Lu Langxiu understood that they had to make peace. You will return to ancient times to practice later. Tianhao said, Ye Fuxian, how long do you plan to stay in ancient times? I'm not sure, I might go to a deserted city. Ye Fuxian said, Ye Wachan's arm can't be cut off in vain. Even if he couldn't take revenge on his own now, he had to think about some things and plan to enter the abandoned country in the future. Your territory is a little lower. Tianhao said, Lulan ancient country has placed many prince artifacts in the ancient realms. They have been obtained from ancient ruins for many years. A piece of Gukan, but maybe not enough, the girl will take you to choose after returning to the ancient world. Ye Fuxian blinked, thinking that it was indeed the queen of the ancient kingdom. This means. Not long ago, it was like killing his life. In the blink of an eye, adults are taking care of the younger generation. Thank you, queen. Ye Fuxian thanked him. You go out first, and I say a few words to the girl. After another day, Ye Fuxian nodded, then went out. After Ye Fuxian left, Tianhao looked at Lulan Zuidao. Don't you also want to go to a deserted city to train, just to be together? Lu Langxiu looked at Tianhao, and it seemed that she had not given up. This trash thing is so hypocritical. Stay with him with your face. I can't believe that he doesn't care, and forgets his girlfriend within a month. Tianhao said, be sure to let him ask me, let me marry you. I seem to think of a future scene. Tianhu's eyes sneered with a hint of fantasy. Diaolan Langxiu looked up at the sky and remained silent. All right, then go, Tianhao said. Come. Lu Langxiu nodded, then left the palace and found Ye Fuxian. Let's go back to the ancient world of the desert. Lu Langxiu said. Okay. Ye Fuxian nodded his head, and they returned to the ancient world one after another. Lulanzu was as calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. In the palace where Ye Yishan lived, after returning, a black wind carving came forward. Qi Yutian walked towards him. Ye Fusion asked, "Is there anyone on the other side who came to harass you? They are very arrogant and come to look from time to time, as if guarding us, waiting for us to leave Lulan Palace. The rest of his life doesn't matter." Ye Fusion's eyes lit up, waiting to start. No dust. Ye Fusion looked at Lin Yao, but did not see Ye Wachan. Retreat in retreat. The rest of his life said, "During your rest period, the dust-free progress is very good, and my practice has also broken through to the second order law realm." Yes. Ye Fusion laughed. "I look same as you." Yulin Yao slanted her lips. This group of cultivating monsters only existed at the second order realm. When he was in the previous 9-star glory realm, the two men were only 7-star glory. How long had it been before he caught up with her? This is still the world. I don't know how far the combat power has left him. Then we continue to train for a period of time, wait until the end of the dust-free practice. Ye Fusion said again. Ye Wachan got the will of the prince in the ancient ruins, then broke his arm, and got the magic weapon. Lack of awareness, of course it takes time to influence the world and stabilize desires. The next time, Ye Fusion continued his quiet practice. On this day, he was playing in the palace, and a ghost came, but the moon was very beautiful. Behind him, Zhao Ha and Shi Tong followed, looking at Ye Fusion indifferently. The beautiful Ye Lotus stepped lightly, walked in front of Ye Fusion of Fukan, and smiled charmingly. "You are finally back. I haven't seen you for a few days, but I miss you a little." Smiled charmingly and enchantingly. "Unfortunately, I have no interest in older women." Ye Fusion looked at Yu Linglong. Ling Yu's beautiful eyes froze, looked at Ye Fusion, and she said, "Qian Shao asked me to ask, haven't you found the answer yet? What do you want to explain?" Ye Fusion asked in confusion. Shi Tong coldly snorted, and said, "Lately, it is said that you came out of the ancient world. What treasure did you exchange for a treasure book?" "A lot, you want." Ye Fusion looked at Shi Tong. "Ye Fusion, are you going to hide in the royal palace for the rest of your life and not come out?" Zhao Ha said directly. His voice was very cold. Ye Fusion didn't appear in Lulan Palace, so they wouldn't be good at starting at Lulan Palace. It was too much to face the Lulan royal family. "Did you finish it?" Ye Fusion looked at the three and said, "Go after you are done." The three of them looked at Ye Fusion, looking very cold. This man was still as arrogant as before. "I understand how long you can hide." Zhao Ha left a voice and the three left. "Hide." Ye Fusion showed a cute expression. These people have really been waiting for them. After a few more days, Ye Wachan finally came out. His temperament seemed to have changed a bit, and it was even purer. Even if he didn't let out a breath, standing there would give people the feeling of a sword. "How was the training?" Ye Fusion asked. "5th level law phase realm, Kendo will also be perfect." Ye Wachan's voice was calm. "I understand." Ye Fusion nodded, and then left here to find the maid, Lu Langxiu, and entrusted Lu Langxiu with an incident to block the palace news. Today, Qian Yang and others are still opposite Ye Fusion. The mood is not so good. Ye Fusion can really hide. For days, there is no sign of leaving the palace. However, Bento is training alone here. After all, the Lulan royal family is not in a hurry. At this time, outside the palace, a figure walked quietly into the palace. He walked uncomfortably, as if with a certain rhythm, stepping into the palace. After a while, he stood in front of Qian Yang and the others. At this time, Qian Yang, Zhao Ha and Shi Tong gathered to discuss some matters. At this moment, their eyes were all looking forward. I was there, with a one-armed figure walking quietly. He held his sword in his right hand, pointed his sword at the ground, and came to Qian Yang in front of them step by step. Qian Yang, they all showed strange looks. Ye Wachan, what does this mean? He was so arrogant that he entered their palace one sword at a time. Chapter 185, Zero Yang's death. Ye Wachan stood there, like a sword. He looked at the 5 people in front of him and said, "Go, or die." Qian Yang's attitude lately is very clear, waiting for them to leave, and then depriving them of the treasures that they have obtained in the ruins. They have even made it clear, without covering up. At the time when Ye Fusion left for the outside world, Qian Yang continued to stare at them and regard them as victims. In this case, there is no need to say more. I left, and both sides were fine. If you don't leave, you are the enemy, and you can only die on one side. Ye's words are still not much, simple words are enough to express his attitude. Qian Yang and the others hearing Ye Wachan's words revealed a strange look. The 5 of them were top-tier talents. Even if Ye Wachan had a weapon, how could he bridge the gap in the world? I'm just Zhao Ha. He was afraid that he would not be able to deal with it, not to mention that Qian Yang had a prince, and the increase in his strength was not small enough to kill an ordinary peak figure. Is my arm broken, and my brain not functioning properly? Shi Tong said coldly. Qian Shao, this is where he killed her and died here. Isn't that girl blaming us? Yu Linglong said with a smile. Zhao Ha. At this time, Qian Yang said, kill him, the sword is yours. Many thanks to Qian Shao. Zhao Ha nodded. He intended for this, the same sword repair, Ye Wachan's sword, he asked. I stepped forward. Zhao Ha released a very sharp sword. Behind him, a sword shadow appeared, as if a sharp sword was continuously spurting out, hanging behind Zhao Ha, screaming. Since you want to die, I have to fulfill you. Zhao Han's eyes were extremely cold and the killing was extremely severe. He was the son of the head of Yu Janzong and was very talented, but in the Wanghao grottos, Ye Fusion's 3 people directly suppressed him. He is very talented. Ye Wachan was the same as Zhu Zhu in his talent. Unfortunately, no matter how talented you are, you will die. The Faxiang sword behind him exploded. One sword light was like lightning, it was brighter that day, and the light refracted by the sword light was even dazzling. A sharp and loud sound came out, and in an instant, the sword pierced the void and landed in front of Ye Wachan. But almost at the same time, Ye Wachan's sword exploded, and an invisible air rushed through his body. With him as the center, a terrifying sword storm appeared all around him. When Zhao Han's sword was killed, he was torn apart by the terrible atmosphere of the sword, and every sword was like that. Zhao Ha stepped forward, and with each step, the power of the sword became stronger, and the sword floating behind him shot and killed continuously, as if crowning Ye Wachan. The sword in Ye Fusion's hand spun slightly, and then the sword stabbed, like a rain of silk. Every sword that was killed was completely destroyed. Zhao Han's body moved, and a sword appeared in his hand. His speed was as fast as a sword. Suddenly, there is a light, this is a sword light. The brightness of this sword light blinded Ye Wachan's eyes. The next moment, the light became brighter and brighter, not only brighter, but also colder, slicing the void and cutting into Ye Wachan's body. Nice sword. Yu Linglong praised. Zhao Ha is indeed the son of Yu Janzong, and his strength is still in doubt. Sword is born, Ye Wachan is a meteorite, there is no way to live. A terrible kendo will bloom on Ye Wachan's body, pour into the sword in his hand, and then hold the sword. The sword is like rain, the sword light is like the light of the stars, and space is like a meteor shower. Zhao Han's dazzling cold sword light was drowned out by the rain of sword stars, with cuts and holes, and then shattered. 2 sword lights stop when touched. Zhao Han's body also stopped and stood not far in front of Ye Wachan. He looked at Ye Wachan, his pupils dilated slightly, and then he revealed fear, despair, and regret. The next moment, his body was bleeding, and every hole in his body seemed to be bleeding, and was immediately drowned by blood. When he saw Zhao Ha fall to the ground, the expressions of Qian Yang and the others were not so relaxed. They were dumbfounded and terrified. The random smiles before them had long since disappeared, and their eyes were fixed on Zhao Ha on the ground. He still stood there quietly, but let go of Wang Hu Qiyun's one-handed figure. Kang Hu Qiyun. Shi Tong leaked Ye Wachan, when did he do it? Moreover, it is the luck of the middle prince, the purest kendo, and Ye Wachan, who is bathed in this will, like the sharpest sword in the world. Zhu Ye's dust-free cultivation has also gone further, and now it is a fifth-order method. If this kingdom was not in their eyes before, the fifth-order kingdom with the will of the kendo prince was already terrifying enough to fight across the kingdom with ease. The prince will be about to attack him. There will be a tremendous growth power. What's even more terrifying is that Ye Wachan also happens to have a magic sword in his hand, a magic sword that contains the will of the prince. Ye Wachan is urged by the will of the prince, will be able to exert the power of magic weapons. Under the double superposition, Ye Wachan's sword is definitely a sword of the peak of the law. If he is not strong enough, he will not be able to survive Li Doan at that time. Although he paid the price of a broken arm, but with Li Daoyun's strength, if he is not strong enough, he wants to run away with a broken arm. Now, Ye Wachan is much stronger than when he and Li Doan were at war at that time. World splintering and pure will greatly increase his strength. Oh, Ye Wachan's body moved. When he moved, the world around him was instantly shrouded in a sword, and the breath of the 4 Qianyang people broke, and the far face blossomed. Seeing Ye Wachan's killing, Zhenwu Zongshitong immediately stepped out, a giant axe appeared in his hand, and with a roar, a terrifying power oppressed the space, and Shitong looked like a terrible person behind him. A giant figure, wielding a huge axe, slashed at Ye Wachan's body, trying to divide heaven and earth and slash at Ye Wachan. The light shone, and the sword moved forward, accompanied by an extremely cold sword light, and a huge crack appeared in the Shitong big axe. There was a squeak, and there was blood in his throat, and then the blood continued to flow out. Ye's dust-free body seemed to turn into a shadow after killing him. He went straight to the next Moon Linglong. When Yu beautifully saw Shi's unified attack, she couldn't help but her expression changed greatly. Her beautiful eyes became extremely charming, and at a glance, a vision appeared in Ye Wachan's mind. Yu beautifully walked towards him step by step, her clothes slipped down, charming and dazzling, with a variety of charms. You are willing to kill the family. He is good at spiritual fantasy, magic mage of the spiritual department. He has strong magic skills, especially good at boys and girls. Under his spiritual illusion, he is enough to make people unable to break away. In Ye Chen's dustless mind, he only has the last transparent shirt, towering, but more charming, enough to make people lose heart. However, how strong is Ye Wachan's will now, the will of the prince class? In his mind, there are countless sharp swords piercing the sexy body, and they are instantly erased, and the pink powder is like a skull. With a squeak, Yuling's beautiful eyes froze and her face was pale. She was a psychic magic spell, but her defensive ability was comparable to Shitong, who was killed by a single sword, not to mention her. The leafless dust is like a perfect bow, and 2 people die. At this moment, there were only 2 of the 5, Qianyang and Dugu Leng. Qianyang's face was extremely ugly, and Wang Huqiyun shook himself, staring at Ye Wachan in front of him. The prince's swordplay will bloom. Ye Wachan didn't look like the number 5 person, and he wasn't any less powerful than him. Qiyun, the prince of Qianyang, is lower and relatively inferior, and has not yet fully formed into a kind of pure will. Ye Wachan held the magic weapon sword and walked towards Qianyang step by step. The powerful prince was about to bloom, making Ye Wachan's momentum extremely terrifying. At Qianyang, a terrifying breath erupted. Thunder, fire, swords, and many different power attributes bloomed from the body. Coupled with Wang Huqiyun, it was not at all the same as before. Behind Qianyang, Dugu Leng showed a strong coldness. He held a sword in his hand, and an extremely violent breath seeped from him. Ye Wachan emptied his body, his sword was raised, and the Endless One would violently erupt. At this moment, Ye Wachan seemed to be the real prince, and in fact, he had a bit of emperor power. At this moment, the endless stream of air around the world seemed to converge on his sword, as if worshipping. Ye Wachan's momentum was getting stronger and stronger, and the sword in his hand became a heavenly sword. Qianyang also has princely luck. Although inferior, but with his own strength, he is just as strong. Ye Wachan naturally went all out. Finally, Ye Wachan's sword was cut off, and the sword of the heavens, ordered 10,000 ways, and an endless stream of air gathered around him, followed by a sword, and cut into the Qianyang below. On Qianyang's body, a lightning sword floated in the sky. For a moment, there seemed to be a roar of dragon thunder and a fire dragon rod in the void. Spell and swordsmanship combined, sword like law, law like sword. The 2 breaths of horror collided, and Qianyang shouted, "Dolly is cold." His voice fell, and Dugu's cold body moved, and a loud breath came out, and then he heard a soft voice. Qianyang's body shivered violently, his face was as pale as paper, his breath was lost, the sword in the void was severed, and it split straight from the sky. Dugu's body moved backwards rapidly, and on Qian's back, there was a shocking knife mark. He shivered, turned around in pain, and looked at Dugu Leng. Why? Dugu Leng didn't look at him, but looked up and looked at Ye Wachan. "The father is my master. When I return, I will rule over the Ming master." He and Zhao Ha were killed by the people of the desert city. Ye looked at him without a word and didn't speak. "Even if you kill me, Lulin will cooperate with you to hide it, but master will still investigate, and eventually there will be a clue." Dugu Leng added, "His death has my sword, and I will always hide the truth." Qianyang stared at Dugu Leng coldly, fell into despair and anger, not staring at death. Chapter 186, So Cute. Ye Wachan stood in the void, his sword flowed, his eyes stared at Dugu coldly. Qianyang has the luck of the prince, and the peak of the French phase is that he can still fight with him even without a magic weapon. However, because of the coldness of his loneliness, Qianyang did not even have the opportunity to develop his own strength, so he died. The person who is suffocating is very embarrassed and does not look up. Of course, Ye Wachan did not sympathize with him. He only felt that Duoleng was cold-blooded and did not hesitate. When Qianyang confronted him, he stabbed Qianyang into his body. And Ye Wuchen also had to admit that his words made sense. After the ancient ruins, all the strong people left. Of course, no one knew that Fusion and Qianyang and the others were still here. As long as the people in Lulin help hide it, the people outside will not know what happened here, and Ye Futian let the girl get in the way of this side, and no news came out, so he started. However, if Qianyang and the others disappeared due to running out of air, the land of Qianmeng would definitely be inspected to the end. After all, it is still possible to find some. If there was a cold and lonely cooperation to push things into a barren strong city, it would undoubtedly be more perfect. Concealing, since Du Guleng can act so decisively, he must have his own abilities. Yunkanmo is a cripple, Ye Wuchen said. Yunkanmo knew the grievances of the two sides. In fact, because he can kill Qianyang, he is not afraid of revenge from the opposing party in the ancient world. Lang Qianmeng does not have this ability. He was worried that the land of Qianmeng would release its fury on the Kangye kingdom. Since Yunqingmo can promise to be your servant, you can see his ambition for spiritual practice. My master is the only son. After Qianyang's death, I will most likely inherit the position of leader, plus Zhao Han's death. If he joins me, Yu Janzong chief, it might be him. Dugu coldly, he is a smart person, and the words of two people are more convincing than mine. Jiu Dugu Leng was a person who could make 13 steps in the Wanghao cave, and his talent was unquestionable. Ye was silent, and then the sword on his body disappeared, saying, "You better do as you say." I naturally understand what to do. Dugu Leng said, "With your 3 talents, even if you become the land leader of the 1,000 leagues, I don't want to have an enemy like you." He witnessed Ye Fusion's talent from the Wanghao cave. Such people cannot be killed, they are dead people. The death of Zhao Ha and others in Qianyang today is the best evidence. Qianyang wants to use Ye Fusion, what will happen in the end? As an orphan, he was much more difficult today than Qianyang. He knows how to observe and is cold-blooded. Let's go, Ye Wuchen said. He admitted that he was persuaded, and Yunqingmo was indeed a cripple, and it was perfect for Dugu Leng to solve it. Farewell. Dugu coldly flashed, then turned and left, no one to stop him. After Lu Dugu left, Lu Langxiu appeared, and Ye Fusion and the rest of his life also came here. Ye Fusion, he never came out, he believed Ye Wuchen would handle it well. This fellow hasn't said a word before. The rest of his life said, Dugu Leng is the least present among the 5 people in Qianyang. Even if he had the same talent as Qianyang, it was easy to overlook. This talent is dangerous, Ye Fusion said lightly. Can that girl help me? Ye Fusion looked at Lulin Zuedav. You say, Lu Langxiu looked at him. Help me send someone to Qianmeng City and keep an eye on Qianmeng City's movements. Ye Fusion said that even though he and Dugu Leng were now tied, they still had to prepare and see if Dugu Leng could succeed. Hiding the sky and crossing the sea, sooner or later the death of Qianyang will spread in Qianmeng City, and then you will know exactly. Okay. Lu Langxiu understood Ye Fusion's point and nodded. We practiced for a while, just waiting for the news there, and then set off for the deserted city. Ye Fusion said to Ye Wuchen and the rest of his life, everyone naturally has no opinion. The desolate city was the absolute center of the Eastern Wasteland. The area around the desolate city was the entrance to the top forces in the Eastern Wasteland. They each occupied one side and gathered in the deserted city to compete. There must be a strong cloud like the ancient kingdom of Lulin. There are many strengths, and we can see their strengths. This will be their last stop in the ancient city. After leaving the ancient city, they will leave the ancient city in the desert city. He will try to solve the threat brought by Luo Junlin joining the Hanging King Temple. After a few months, the palace of King Oba. You are back, controlled by the strong. When Ye Tianzi sent Ye Fusion and others to the desert ancient world, he sent strong people to stay outside and was ready to respond at any time. Everyone knew Luo Tianzi's intention to kill Ye Fusion. He listened to the wind party and showed his determination. If the dead fish net is broken, you will not shoot yourself, but you also need to take precautions, so there are many Kangye Gakiang standing there outside the entrance of the ancient world. Moreover, now that the battle between the Kangye kingdom and the Nandu kingdom had heated up, he himself had witnessed Luo Tianzi's movements. Yusio Ri, Ye Tianzi naturally saw it in person. At this time, the people who entered the palace with Ye, as well as some talented people in Kangye Academy. How about this trip? Ye Tianzi looked at Ye and others, and asked with a smile. The sky in the ancient realm and as lonely as the clouds. When you enter the world, you know the size of the heavens and the earth. I am an extraordinary figure in the Kang Yeguo country. That's good to know. Ye Tianzi nodded. It seems that the lucky prince is really not obtained. Luo Junlin can win the lucky prince. It is indeed very talented. What about Fusion and Wachan, aren't they back together? Ye Tianzi asked again. Ye Yan frowned when he heard Ye Tianzi's question, and seemed to stop talking. Seeing his expression, Ye Tianzi asked, if you have something, say it. Father Wang, Ye Fusion is an outsider after all. Even if his talent is extraordinary, isn't his father ready to bring the wolf into the room? Ye looked at Ye Tianzi and said, in the ancient world, Ye Fusion relied on his talent, and never looked at me. Disgusted walking with me, Ye Wachan and he both Kang Ye Guifeng Wayan Tianzhao, the two are even closer, and I become a bystander. Ye Tianzi blinked and looked at the others, only to see that they were silent, but it seemed that they had agreed to Ye's words. I know, you go down and rest first. Ye Tianzi said lightly. Yes. Ye Yan nodded and stepped back. Call Ye Dunchen and Ye Lingxi to come over. After Ye left, Ye Tianzi said to his guardian. Soon, Ye Dunchen and Ye Lingxi came here. Tianzi looked at the two and told Ye Dunchen and Ye Lingxi what you just said, and asked, what do you think? Although Ye Fusion is very proud, but he is not that kind of person, and not to mention his brother is a prince. Even if not, the father and king have kindness to Ye Fusion, he will not be like that, Ye Dunchen said. I also agree that at the Fenwa banquet, Ye Fusion put forward a condition to take care of his teacher, and the rest of his life put forward a condition to find his teacher, and then Nan Duguo listened to the wind party, and they worked hard for this. Ye Lingxi also said, if you don't see Ye Fusion's nature, the father will not treat him like this. Ye Tianzi didn't say anything to Ye Fusion at all. She received flowers as a virtuous daughter, and almost fought with Ye Luoshan and Luo Tianzi. Then, he directly caused the war between the two countries, not to mention Luo Junlin was rewarded by the great forces in the eastern wasteland. Case. If it's just a gift, Ye Fusion is a ruthless person, what will happen to him in the future when the Kangye kingdom suffers? You think Ye is lying? Ye Tianzi said. Ye Dunchen lowered his head and Ye Lingxi was silent, which was a bit sensitive. In that case, Ye is afraid to do something unkind to Ye Fusion. Ye Tianzi whispered, otherwise Ye would not have to come to sue Ye Fusion unless the two sides broke up in the ancient world. Conflict, Ye Yan must sue. Moreover, Ye Zhen trained at Kangye Academy, and it was normal for Kangye Academy to approach him, but if he accompanied him to bully the king. At that moment, someone outside shouted, Your Majesty, Princess Siyu is trying to see you. Let Jiyu in, Ye Tianzi said, looking out of the hall, and then he saw Hua Jiyu coming. The current Waji language is still as beautiful and elegant as before, and his temperament seems to be a little more extraordinary. Ya Tianzi naturally knows that all this time, the Waji language has followed the practice of the state teacher, and some transformations have taken place in his body, and his strength has greatly improved. Siyu met his true father. Siyu, saying that you don't need to salute like an outsider, the little boy in Fusion doesn't have as much etiquette as you. Ye Tianzi smiled. Ye Fu, I heard that the big prince is back. Hua Jiyu asked, and Ye Tianzi smiled and looked at him, want to ask Fusion's news. Hua Jiyu nodded gently. Fusion is not back with Ye, he still has to train in the wilderness, Ye's talent is not working, he left early. Ye Tianzi said. Ye Fu, I want to go to the ancient world of the desert. Hua Shiyu's beautiful eyes looked at Ye Tianzi. Funny, although you have made great progress in the past 6 months, you are only in the second order realm. He did not enter the ancient world before the world of law. Hua Jiyu said, in addition, today, I can't break through the world to enter the third order law realm. I also want to go to the ancient world to test. Ye Yezi noticed Wajiyu's eyes, then nodded, okay, Dan Chen and Ling Shi will go with you, and I will send someone to protect them. After entering the ancient world, don't bother. See Ye Fu. Hua Jiyu nodded with a smile, then left. Zunwa Mary knew that he would refuse to enter the ancient world with harsh words, and said, see you, Fu Tian brat is very shrewd, aren't you worried about him? I really don't feel relieved. Hua Jiyu whispered softly, after such a long time, that man couldn't come back to see me. He saw Hua Jiyu's expression, and the flower was romantic for a while, then he said, see you, although the Fusion boy looks luxurious, he only speaks verbally, so don't worry about it. I believe in him, but I don't believe in other women, Waji murmured, that man is very bad, very attractive. Chapter 187, Desert City, Mirror Mountain. The abandoned city, the city center of the ancient world, is also the most magnificent ancient city in the ancient world, with a very long history. In the deserted city, there are top arrogant figures from all sides of the eastern desert, as well as people from all directions in the eastern desert. No matter how extraordinary their talents are, foreigners do not dare to easily get lost in this city. Perhaps the disciples of the top forces in the eastern wasteland, who wouldn't know how to die then. Therefore, in this extremely prosperous ancient city, the top-level disciples in the eastern wasteland are the absolute protagonists, and the rest can only be used as tinfoil. In this city, there are often top disciples of the eastern lands battle. At this time, in a deserted city, a line of people walked on Kingshi Street. This one is very extraordinary. The person standing in the middle, he is about 17 or 18 years old, has a very handsome face, and always has a light smile on his face, which is very deadly for a young woman. To his left was a burly man, with a majestic appearance, a burly figure, and an endless sense of power, and to his right, a one-armed youth with a sword on his back and staring at him with a glance. In order to give people a sharp sense, it must be a strong sword refinement. Behind the three, there are two women, both of them are incomparably beautiful, and their appearance is extraordinary, especially the woman on the right is different. Silver hair like snow, beautiful and devilish. His body was very cold. Temperament. Behind him, people like a group of guards followed. A group of people walking on the road will undoubtedly make people look at it a little more, and secretly don't know which of the young disciples in the eastern wasteland. The only thing that was slightly discordant was the black wind that was carved next to it. Such an extraordinary group of people, the mountain turned out to be like an ordinary monster, of course it looked too ordinary. This number line is naturally Ye Fusion and others. Lu Langxiu also came. It was ordered by Tian Hao to go with him. Even without a guard, Ye Fusion felt strange, but it was hard to say no. Clear. Ye Fusion asked at this time, he asked Lin Yao. Lin Yao nodded. Maimo looked at Ye Fusion hard. After arriving at the deserted city, this person asked himself to ask something. After Yun Qianmo left, Yan Ran managed to replace Yun Qianmo. The role of being a servant-like figure was too much. Lead the way. Ye Fusion didn't seem to see Lin Yao's irritated eyes, and said lightly, and then a group of people walked behind the black wind carving, and the black wind carved rose in the wind, walking over the deserted city. In the barren city, there were many huge monsters riding the wind, and they each went in different directions without disturbing each other. The beauty of Lin Yao and Lu Langxiu sometimes attracted attention, but no one came to interfere. After a while, they arrived in a deserted downtown area. The buildings below were more majestic, the monsters in the void were denser, and the strong were more and more. Lin Yao held the map in her hand and guided her direction. Gradually, an extremely tall mountain appeared in their field of vision. This mountain stands so in the middle of the ancient world, but it doesn't seem to be bothersome at all, but a little sacred, and many people are rushing towards the mountain. As the black wind sculptures continued to advance, they slowly approached the mountain. On the mountain ahead, they could see a huge monument. Unrivaled handwriting. The inscription on the stull is the ancient world, as if the name of the ancient world came from this. Ye Fusion muttered to himself. The black wind carving moved forward, came to the top of the mountain, and descended on the huge stone monument. This 100-meter high stone monument has many figures in front of it. The three characters in the ancient world seem to have strange magical powers, which makes people want to see more. Not far next to the stone monument was a staircase leading to the top of the mountain, and many people were walking up the stairs along the way, like a pilgrimage. Go up, Ye Fusion said, and followed many others, walked up the stairs next to the inscription, walked down the stairs to the end, splashed with the top of the inscription. At the top of the mountain, the terrain was extremely flat, as if it had been manually leveled. It is a large area with many active people here. As soon as Ye Fusion and others set foot here, they felt good luck. When his eyes swept around, Ye Fusion was quite surprised. Of course, when he explored, on top of the Mirror Mountain, there was everything a practitioner could want. I saw that in this mountain and the vast land, there are many different areas, and each area seems to have a relic. Someone plays chess, this game is very esoteric. Someone paints, and that painting can communicate the world. One is playing the piano, another is carving. People in every area practice, communicate with the prince's will, and attract good luck. Hey! At this time, a loud sound came, like the sound of a road. Ye Fusion felt a terrifying momentum. He turned his eyes and looked in a certain direction, and there he saw a row. Drums are standing there. Someone is ringing the drums. The momentum is like a rainbow. With the constant sound of cymbals, more drums reverberate and coalesce into an even more gruesome trend. Another thunder came. Ye Fusion looked in another direction, and there was a thunder field in the area. In addition, there are several prince statues on Mirror Mountain, which contain willpower, and many people practice under the statue. In the vast area, there are people in every area who practice and understand. Many of them are from the great powers of the Eastern Wasteland. On top of the mountain, there was a bustling scene. It is indeed a deserted city center. Ye Fusion whispered. In this area, any professional practitioner can come here for good fortune. He slowly turned his eyes, looking straight ahead. In the distance, there was a mountain wall, which was as smooth as a mirror, like a mirror. This mountain wall is the famous Jingshan stone wall of the Silent City. Mysterious and boundless, it can even detect a practitioner's talent. In addition, the top forces in the Eastern Wasteland left a powerful spell on the Jingshan stone wall. When a strong person came, he would awaken the Jingshan stone wall with the will of a prince. Check out the view here. Ye Fusion didn't know if Luo Jinlin was here, but here, he was enough to solve Luo Jinlin's worries. The face of the Jingshan stone wall not only allows people in the Eastern Wasteland to see Wang Huqiyun, but also contains mystery and has the ability to detect talent. In addition to Wang Huqiyun's level, the Jingshan stone wall is felt by the practitioners. At that time, there will be a vision. There is an image of an imaginary prince on the Jingshan stone wall. People with strong talent can make several prince images on the Jingshan stone wall. The more prince images, the stronger the talent. Ling Yao said. After he entered the deserted city, he went to inquire about the news, so he knew best, but he complained about Ye Fusion in his heart for a long time, and he addressed him as a servant. But when he said this, he had a faint hope in his heart. At that time, Luo Jinlin accepted the prince's fortune, and was accepted as a disciple by the palace of the overgeared kings. But now, Ye Fusion, the rest of his life, and Ye Wuchen, one of them was more talented than Luo Jinlin. In the battle in Lulan Palace a few months ago, Ye Wuchen's prince luck level was already middle prince. Luck if the three of them went to the Jingshan stone wall to show the endowment in the open air and were seen by the main forces in the Eastern Wasteland, he was afraid to imagine what the Kangye Congress would be like at that time. This is beyond doubt. Thinking of the scene where Luo Jinlin was accepted as a disciple in the palace of the deferred kings by the Wind King, he was looking forward to what might happen in Kangye country in the future. What will be Luo Tianzi? Emoticon. Kangye Goi Tianzi paid a lot for Ye Fusion. Even in the war with Luo Tianzi, he should be proud of his vision of the future. Thinking of this, Lin Yao's beautiful eyes fell on Ye Fusion, and she smiled and pushed. Do you want to show it? Loki, don't understand. Ye Fusion said lightly. Lin Yao pouted. Loki, when is this guy Loki? There are so many lucky princes in Jingshan, don't waste it. Ye Fusion looked around with a bright smile on his face. In his eyes, the magic on this mountain is all for the fortune of Prince Ya. Ling Yao's eyes lit up, and she fell silent. He doesn't know what the prince luck level is in Ye Fusion now, but since Ye Wuchen has reached the prince luck level, with this person's talent, there should be a prince luck. In the Lulan ancient ruins, he got 2 treasure books, and even the treasure books that Lulan ancient country treasured most were taken by him, and he would definitely get great luck. Alright, go and choose your suitable training ground. Ye Fusion smiled, everyone nodded. Ye Wuchen stepped out and went in one direction. For a moment, Ye Wuchen came to the front of the sword formation. There was a terrifying sword formation in front of him, which contained Kendo's boundless will. However, at this moment, there was a figure sitting quietly in the row of swords, letting the endless sword intent transport the body. He led the sword into the body to practice, his body flowing with an extraordinary sword intent. It is said that every disciple of Fuyun Janzong will go to ancient times to test the body, and he will come here to train his sword. No one has ever failed. Now, Li Daoqing is naturally the pride of Fuyun Janzong. His talent is as good as his brother Li Doin, someone said next. Suddenly Ye Wuchen's eyes flashed an extremely sharp color, staring at the young figure within the array of swords. Chapter 188, Billowfish. Start high-speed text sync readings on your phone, brother Li Doin. Ye Wuchen's arm was cut off by Li Doin. I didn't expect it to be a coincidence, but Ye Wuchen quickly calmed down, as if he didn't know each other, and walked quietly to the huge sword array. Just for a moment, the sword marks in the sword array lit up, then came towards him. Ye Wuchen sat cross-legged, surrounded by swords around his body. When the endless swords in the array of swords pierced through, he did not resist, but pointed the sword at his body. and there was a faint feeling of heaven in his body, a sword in his body. Like the Sword King, he guides the swords that come from killing, incorporates them into his sword, walks in the body, and cleanses the body. The weak will be annihilated by the sword, and the strong can use the sword array, which is a gap. The rest of the life comes to that row of drums. The drum row has 9 sides, and the sound of gurgling continues. Someone stands in front of the drum and beats the drum. Can continue through the back of the drum, ringing on both sides, third stroke, ringing on 3 sides. Every time the drum strikes, the incomparable power of terror returns, getting stronger and stronger, more and more, and after 3 rings, it is extremely terrifying. After watching for a while, most people can only sound the 5-sided drum. The rest of his life stepped forward, came to the war drum, and then punched a punch, roared, and the drum shook. However, the first sound did not subside, and the second fist was punched directly for the rest of his life. A buzzing sound came out, and a strong momentum and anti-shock force flew from the drum to the rest of his life, but he didn't feel it directly. The third hit is made. The sound of the cymbals continued, and the war drums were like a riot, the terrifying momentum and power simply vanished. Upon hearing such a dense sound, many people turned their gazes towards the battle drum and went to the leaves in one direction. Fu Tian also saw the rest of his life, and couldn't help but roll his eyes. Could he be humble? Is there such a drum? The fourth sound made the sea rough. Many people were speechless. Compared to the rest of their lives, the drummers in front of them should not be too gentle. Unparalleled momentum and power gathered into a fierce storm, hitting the body of the rest of the crazy life, but seeing the roar and fist in the rest of his life, his burly body stood up like a war god. The fifth punch. For a moment, there was a terrible storm of power around him. This power rushed into the rest of his life crazily, washing his body. The clicking sound continued, and a dark golden armor appeared. The living remnant body appeared like boundless power and punch. It's like thunder. More people are looking there. Few people can get it in the drum zone. There was a terrible movement. Lin Yao's beautiful eyes were silent for a while. Boom. In the body of the rest of his life, Wang Huqiun swayed upwards. At this moment, he was like wearing a demon armor, and exploded a 7th blow. He is so strong that he is very strong and powerful. For the rest of his life, the strong body was shocked. With a groan, the corners of his mouth bled. But he didn't give up, and stepped forward again, like a runaway beast, blasting his 8th punch. This punch exploded, many practitioners in the vast area woke up, the eardrum trembled, and for the rest of his life, his body there was a clear click. The power was about to crush him. He opened his mouth and roared, his whole body opened, and the power of terrifying power rushed in. The body of the rest of his life was shocked and blood came out of his mouth, but his fate changed, as if it caused a terrible storm of luck, and gradually, it became more pure and terrible. The sound of the drum still echoed, and it had not subsided. The sound of the cymbals continued throughout his life, and the sound of the drums did not come out. He went to the war drum and made a 9th sound. With this loud sound, the war drum shook 9 times, and the 9-sided war drum resonated. Many people only felt that their hearts were trembling. Then, the power of destruction destroyed all the will rushing into the body of the rest of the life. There was no tension at this time. He flew out, and the dark gold armor on his body seemed to be cracked. The blood in his mouth continued to speed out, and then fell heavily to the ground. However, as if he didn't feel it, he quickly got up and sat there to practice. This idiot, Ye Fusion whispered, he naturally understands the meaning of the rest of his life. He saw that the war drum contains a very strong will, to quickly realize that he is a middle-ranking lucky prince, straight, and use the war drum to satisfy, refine yourself and destroy your own body. That's a madman. Many people secretly said that Ye Fusion did not practice, but went to the rest of his life to protect him. Many people looked at the rest of their lives, and some even came and were full of curiosity for the rest of their lives. For a long time, the rest of his training ended, his eyes opened, and he couldn't help but smile when he saw Ye Fusion beside him, but Ye Fusion gave him a sharp look. At this time, Ye Wuchen also came here, and asked the rest of his life, how is it? Just like you. The rest of his life is laughing. The will of power in the war drum is very pure, and he uses this willpower to temper his body and at the same time to temper his luck. Now, he also realized that he had obtained the will of pure prince power and moderate luck. Borrowing his natural talent for strength, and then relying on the power of the war drum, he can succeed in no time. At this time, Lin Yao's steps came to the side, her beautiful eyes stared at Ye Wuchen, showing a strange expression, seemed to stop talking. What is it? Ye Fusion asked Lin Yao's expression. I just heard a few people's discussion. Li Daoyun's brother is here. Ling Yao said softly. Ye Fusion's eyes flashed and he looked at Ling Yao. I know. Ye Wachan nodded calmly. You know. Ye Fusion looked at him. Well, I was just training with him in sword formation just now. Ye Wachan said calmly, but there are some things that I am not in a hurry to do. Moreover, the one who broke my arm was Li Doin. You do have principles. Ye Fusion glanced at Ye Wachan, then searched and found Li Daoking's direction. He naturally saw the people who trained with Ye Wachan before. I'll try what's on the Jingshan stone wall. Ye Wachan started, picked up his pace, and walked towards the Jingshan stone wall. Ye Fusion and others followed, and he was also curious about how the Jingshan stone wall detected talent. When he came to the Jingshan stone wall, Ye Wachan sat cross-legged, the will of the prince rushing straight into the Jingshan stone wall. Instantly, a bright light appeared on the stone wall, and a strong breath enveloped his body. Jingshan stone wall seems to be an illusion, but also like a mirror, full of strange breath. Ye Wachan closed his eyes. Ye Fusion only saw his sword crazily unleashed on his body, and Wang Huchi Yun was also released to the extreme, as if in battle. Not long after, on the stone wall of Jingshan, a statue of a prince appeared, imprinted on the stone wall-like pattern. After the appearance of the princely figure, Ye Wachan's breath became even more terrifying. Even though he was sitting there, the sword chi around his body ran away. After a while, it seemed that he had experienced a battle on the stone wall of Jingshan mountain. The second statue of the prince appeared. Great. Many people couldn't help but praise him. It's rare to have two statues of a prince. The conditions for the appearance of the prince statue on the Jingshan stone wall were extremely harsh. Many people came to the side and looked at Ye Wachan, who was the saint. For the rest of his life, he played the drums. Now Ye Wachan was testing his talent on the Jingshan stone wall. He was a middle prince with good luck. Ye Wachan was still adamant. The swords around him were terrifying, but after a while, he groaned, the flowing sword disappeared from his body, his eyes opened, and the Jingshan stone wall returned to normal. No one made fun of Ye Wachan. On the contrary, he was quite admired for being able to win the wealth of a middle prince in the fifth order realm, and having two prince statues on the stone wall of Jingshan. That talent was truly terrifying. Are you a disciple of Fuyun Janzong? At this time, someone stepped forward and asked. The person in question was a woman. He looked innocent and curiously looked at Ye Wachan. Not. Ye Wachan said lightly. Strong sword refinement is not as good as Fuyun Janzong, then who is your gatekeeper? The woman asked curiously. Something. Ye Wachan looked at each other. If you haven't joined the power of the ancestral gate, my princess invites you to enter the Liu kingdom, the woman said, looking back at the figure who was looking back. There was Qian Ying wearing a long Xingyi dress standing there. She had a great temperament and had the look of a sinking fish and a swan, standing there with a noble meaning. Princess Liu Guo Liu drowned the fish. The hearts of the people around them trembled. For many people, they also saw the real Liu Shenyu for the first time. It turned out that the peerless beauty before his eyes was Liu Guo's daughter. Liu Shenyu gently nodded at Ye Wachan. In addition to being a place of arrogance and spiritual performance for some top-tier powers, the Jingshan stone wall is also a stage for talented people who haven't joined the top-tier forces to show their talents. After fixing Wang Hu's luck, will come here. Therefore, Liu Shenyu will send someone to invite. Ye Wachan's talent is not an ordinary genius, but his luck is a medium prince's luck. Ye Fusion's eyes flashed, and he didn't expect someone to invite them directly. Ye Wachan seemed to be thinking about whether to make a decision first. Let's think about it, Ye Fusion said. He wasn't in a hurry. He first understood the whole situation of Donghang's situation and said. Liu Shenyu nodded gently and said nothing. At this time, I saw Li Daoqing walking towards the side. He walked in front of Liu Shenyu and said, Fuyun Janzong Li Daoqing, hello to the princess on behalf of the princess. Everyone saw different colors in the scene. It was rumored that Li Doin, the arrogant figure of Fuyun Janzong, was Liu Shenyu's master's suitor, Liu Shenyu. It seems that the rumors are not wrong. Chapter 189, Minions. Start high-speed text sync readings on your phone. Seeing Li Daoqing stepping forward, Ye Fusion showed a different color. The relationship between Fuyun Janzong and the Liu country. Moreover, Li Daoqing greeted on behalf of his brother. Did Li Doin and Princess Liu Guo know? He went to Ye Wachan and whispered, No dust, we are not familiar with the troops in the eastern wasteland, so I rejected his proposal. With Ye Wachan's talented strength, there was no need to worry about not being recruited by the top forces in the eastern wasteland. No explanation needed. Ye Wachan whispered softly, and he naturally understood that Ye Fusion had explained it before because he had made the decision for him. Ye Fuxian nodded slightly. He stepped forward to the woman who invited Ye Wuchen. It should have been Princess Liu Guo's servant and asked, "Does your princess know Li Doin of the Fuyun sect? Have you never heard of it?" The maid looked at Ye Fuxian, surprise. "What do you here?" Ye Fuxian said. "We have many female suitors, and Li Doin is one of them." It was no secret that the maid had some pride. Li Daoyun's pursuit of their daughter was publicly acknowledged. "Does your daughter agree?" Ye Fuxian asked again, and the servant looked at him, and said, "You seem to have a lot of words." Naturally a little more curious to see the princess so extraordinary. Ye Fuxian smiled brightly, the handsome face smiled more beautifully, the maid looked at the handsome face in front of her eyes, and lowered her voice, "Li Doin is very talented, but in Fuyun Janzong, it's not that no one can suppress him. It was not the first person in Fuyun Janzong. How could our daughter so easily agree? Who is strong in the Fuyun Janzong and Liu Kingdom?" Ye Fuxian asked again. Seeing the servant's strange appearance, Ye Fuxian smiled awkwardly. "We came from a small place and admired the great power of the ancient world. Can you tell me?" "Say. Everyone is the main team in East Wasteland," said the servant. "Is that so?" Ye Fuxian's eyes flashed strangely, and his eyes looked at Liu Guo, Liu Shenyu, and then he smiled. "I didn't know Liu Guo was so strong now. I think about it now. You ask about your princess, can we train with you? If it's really right, we will join Liu Guo in the future." "I haven't invited you to join Liu yet," the maid pouted and looked at Ye Wuchen. "Who's he?" "That's my young master, the talent is very strong," Ye Fuxian said. "I can have the luck of a moderate prince, and the talent is very great. Later I will become a Ming princess." The servant said. Ye Fuxian nodded, "Many thanks." Then, he returned to Ye Wuchen's side and smiled, "For you, I have sacrificed a lot. Fortunately, the face value is high, otherwise it will not be able to display news about beautiful men." Ye Wuchen looked at him strangely and said, "What did you just talk about?" "I promised Princess Liu Guo to you, but only said to follow her temporarily." Ye Fuxian smiled. "What is your plan?" Ye Wuchen was confused. "Do you think this Princess Liu Guo is beautiful?" Ye Fuxian laughed. Ye Wuchen actually nodded. "Well, the more beautiful you look, the more beautiful you are, the more you look at them, the more you look at them, and the more you touch, you may have feelings for a long time." Ye Fuxian said meaningfully. Liu Lixiu's beautiful silver eyes flickered beside her. Wasn't this what the queen told her? Lin Yao pursed her lips, and after so long she became emotional. Why did she still treat her as a servant? But what does this person mean? Want to start with Princess Liu Guo? The rest of his life looked at Ye Fuxian with a stunned look. Her sister-in-law is not there. This man has no laws. At this point, Liu Shenyu had to report to the servant girl. Maimo looked at Ye Wuchen by their side, and then she came over and walked over. She is sexy, refined, but noble. When he walked in front of Ye Wuchen, he started, "Will sinking fish." Seeing the woman in front of him, Ye Wuchen couldn't be rude, and said, "You Wuchen." Liu Shenyu looked at Ye Fuxian and the others. "We are the custodians of the master book." Ye Fuxian started, then looked at Lin Yao and Lu Langxiu, and said, "There is a servant." Lin Yao's gloomy beautiful eyes looked at Ye Fuxian. When did he really become a servant? But this time, Ye Fuxian himself became a book boy. "Therefore, you will follow me in the barren ancient world to train in the future. Although your talent is very good, the realm seems to be weak, and following me to train can also take care of you one or two. If you think about it, you will join my country. Tell me," Liu Shenyu said to Ye Wuchen. With Ye Wuchen's talent, if he was willing to join him, he could grow to be a great help in the future. Ye Wuchen only felt that he was miserable by Ye Fuxian King, as if it was that person who counted him. Seeing Liu Shenyu's eyes, he could only nod. Congratulations to the princess for accepting a group of subordinates. At this time, Li Daoqing, who did not leave, began to say, "The bright side seems to be Daoxi, but in fact he is also secretly condescending to Ye Fuxian and others, as if Ye Fuxian and others are just their characters." But in reality, Princess Liu Shenyu never said it. But for Li Daoqing, his older brother is now chasing Liu Shenyu. If Liu Shenyu was accompanied by Ye Wuchen, they could only be under his control. If not, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Ye Fuxian looked at Li Daoqing carefully, and he actually had some similarities with Li Doin. Seeing that Liu Shenyu was still silent, Li Daoqing looked at Ye Fuxian and said, "In the future, wait to serve the princess wholeheartedly. If you have any requests in the future, you can also find me or my brother." Liu Shenyu frowned, and Li Daoqing's words were a little scary. Not to mention that he only invited Ye Wuchen's talent, even when it was his subordinate. When he turned to Li Daoqing for guidance, it was as if his brother Li Doin had an inseparable relationship with him. When Ye Fuxian heard Li Daoqing's words, he showed an interesting look. Zhengqiu couldn't find a reason, but she took the initiative to come to the door, so she was accepted. Li Doin wants to chase the sinking willow fish. In this case, he wants to see how Li Doin catches up. Princess, who is she? Ye Fuxian asked understandingly. Fuyun Janzong Li Daoqing, said Liu Shenyu. Princess, this person's words have a series of voices that damage your reputation, as if the princess already belongs to them. Ye Fuxian said, relax, can we help the princess teach her? Li Daoqing heard Ye Fuxian's words instantly froze there. The sentence is a little ambiguous. It seemed wrong, but it was just a quick slap, and he didn't mean to. Tell, shut up, I'm talking to the princess. Where I can make you a slave to pointing and drawing. Li Daoqing scolded angrily, his eyes were very sharp. He had heard Ye Fuxian say guard Ye Yechen before. The guard dares to be so arrogant and provocative. The relationship between him and the princess was completely absurd. Li Daoqing, you are presumptuous. Liu Shenyu said coldly. Princess, this slave is too stupid, so dare to challenge, I have no respect for the princess. Li Daoqing said to Liu Shenyu. Huh. Liu Shenyu snorted coldly, and the sentence was indeed easy to misinterpret, saying there was no problem with disrespecting him. Princess, you also heard that, we can't stand it. Ye Fuxian said at this time. Liu Shenyu looked at Ye Fuxian and said, Li Daoqing cultivates the 5th level realm. The man from the Flying Cloud sect, a tier 5 law state, Wang Hu Qiyun, Li Daoqing's combat power is truly extremely strong. Ye Fuxian is just Ye Wuchen's son, how can he handle it, except for Ye Wuchen to take pictures? This is only the 5th level realm, Ye Fuxian said confidently. Liu Shenyu saw his expression, thought that if this person was so young, he could beat Li Daoqing. All my life, just when Liu Shenyu thought he would move on his own, Ye Fuxian shouted, exhale for the princess. Yes. The rest of his life took a step forward. He took the tomahawk into his hands and took a step forward. Li Daoqing's figure flashed, rose into the air, his body was covered with a magnificent sword, looking cold at the rest of his life in Ye Fuxian. How dare you ignore it so much? The terrifying sword-like flow crazed, shrouding the body for the rest of its life. The next moment, I saw the rest of my life stepping out, a loud sound, the body flew straight into the sky, the ruthless body, and the terrifying speed, shot straight at Li Daoqing. You seek death. Li Daoqing pointed his finger down at the void. Suddenly, an endless sword intent rolled towards the rest of his life, and a chaotic sword intent flowed wildly, destroying everything. But I saw the tomahawk in the hand, the rest of the life was split open, only one axe, the void seems to be split open, and you will be split under this axe if your sword is sky high and extraordinary. The sword gas rushed towards both sides. The middle part was split open, and the body of the remaining life fell directly in front of Li Daoqing without any tension. With Li Daoqing's horrified look, the rest of the split tomahawk, but horizontally descended, a clicking sound came out, and then a loud sound was heard. Li Daoqing smashed into pieces to the ground, an axe was cut, and he was merciful for the rest of his life, otherwise the axe was enough to cut it. Li Daoqing just wanted to stand up, but listened to the boring popping sound, and lay down again, stamping his feet directly for the rest of his life. Very cruel. Minion. The slave in Li Daoqing's mouth stepped on it. Countless eyes looked at the scene while losing their minds, but Li Daoqing was a person from the Fuyun sect, and Li Daoyun's brother was being treated by him like this now. This showdown ended, and the princess got involved, for fear that it would be difficult to completely escape. Ye Fuxian looked at the scene calmly, and had no sympathy for Li Daoqing. This is just a little interest received by Li Doin, and Li Daoqing took the initiative to send it. Chapter 190, I am the worst. Start high-speed text sync readings on your phone. Li Daoqing was a little embarrassed, only felt very painful, but what made him intolerable was humiliation. Fuyun Janzong people, wherever they go, are not always beautiful, they are always alone and act without worries and whatever they want. Today, he was stepped on directly. The tomahawk is a powerful magic weapon. Someone dared to trick him with a magic weapon. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes also squinted, and he stared at the scene in front of him. For the rest of his life, the battle was too cruel, moreover Li Doin of Fuyun Janzong was really rude. Princess, this kind of block-jumping clown doesn't even bother to harass you, just give it to us later. Ye Fuxian invited Liu Shenyu to make a contribution, as if it was really for Liu Shenyu's anger. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes showed a strange look, and looked at Ye Fuxian. You will die terribly. Li Daoqing lay on the ground looking at Ye Fuxian. You don't seem to understand the current situation. Ye Fuxian looked at him strangely. You can kill me with courage. Li Daoqing's eyes were very sharp. Ye Fuxian didn't speak, but he grabbed his arm for the rest of his life, and the arm full of explosive power shook him violently, making a loud noise. Li Daoqing's body smashed to the ground, the blood in his mouth vomited. Boom, boom, boom. Continuous tremors rang out, and everyone stared at the scene with a stun. Li Daoqing was crushed by the rest of his life in his hands, and every time he fell, his heart trembled. After the rest of his life stopped, Li Daoqing was numb, but his eyes still stared coldly at the rest of his life, showing a very intense killing thought. He rose violently, his body shaking unsteadily. The rest of his life was dead in his eyes. Go back and sue. For the rest of his life, Li Daoqing kicked and kicked. Li Daoqing's face turned blue, and everyone's hearts were twitching. Adding this sentence to the rest of his life was undoubtedly Li Daoqing's shame. Go back and sue. Really embarrassing. Li Daoqing got up again, his body was already injured, and he dragged his wolf body away. Do you know what the power of the Union sect is? Liu Shenyu said to Ye Fuxian beside him. I know, Ye Fuxian said, sooner or later, he will be offended. Of course, they would not really kill Li Daoqing now. He still knows how to do things for the rest of his life. The battle is normal, and even insults can't be short. However, if Li Daoqing was killed, it could cause the Union sect behind to shoot. Why did he come to the ancient world? Not only to solve the threat posed by Luo Junlin, but Luo Junlin's threat mainly came from the Hanging King temple behind him. Currently, they have not killed Li Daoqing's spirit. I came to Jingshan Stone Wall City to prepare for this. Li Daoqing's older brother Li Doin is Fuyong Janzong's top heavenly pride. Well, looks like I have to train well. Ye Fuxian laughed. Princess, you talked to my young master. With that said, Ye Fuxian left here. In the ancient world, the power of many relics can be borrowed, so the many relics here should not be a problem. Moreover, this large area was enough for them to train here for a long time. Liu Shenyu watched Ye Fuxian leave. He walked to Ye Wuchen and smiled. Bookboy, guard, servant. Bookboys are not like shopkeepers, custodians are not like custodians, and waiters are not like waiters. The appearances of the two maids could be compared to him. Who would believe? This fellow likes to play tricks. Don't blame the princess, Ye Wuchen said. So, isn't that right? Liu Shenyu looked into Ye Wuchen's eyes. All brothers. What about them? Liu Shenyu looked at Lu Langxiu and Lin Yao, who were beautiful women. You should ask him. Ye Wuchen looked at Ye Fuxian and suddenly Liu Shenyu showed a strange look, then smiled and said, you brothers are very thin. Skin. Ye Wuchen muttered, then nodded, it was really skinny. Which powers do you guys come from? Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes looked at Ye Wuchen, who dared to deal with Li Daoqing so rudely, plus the talent of a group. Was it the arrogant character developed by which top forces? It's just relatively low and unknown. This question is also key. Why he liked Ye Wuchen was nothing more than the prince's wealth and talent. If Ye Wuchen really wanted to join the top-level casual training, he was naturally willing to get Liu Guo. Ye Wuchen looked at Liu Shenyu's gaze and said, we have nothing to hide at this time. It really is from a small army. The trip to this deserted city is to enter the peak army. Liu Shenyu heard Ye Wuchen's words, and his eyes flashed a different color. However, I have something to say to the princess. In fact, there are some grudges between me and Li Doin. My arm was cut off by Li Doin. Ye Wuchen said quietly, as if he was talking about something very unusual. Things. If Ye Fuxian heard Ye Wuchen, he would say that this person is too sincere, but maybe this is also because of Jian Zhu's thoughts. Ye Wuchen is very suitable for sword repair, both in talent and in mind. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes had a wave of fluctuation for the first time, and looked at Ye Wuchen in amazement. A few months ago, 4 arrogant figures from the top 4 forces in the eastern wasteland went to Lulan city. Li Doin is one of them. Are you from Lulan? Liu Shenyu said. No, we came from far away, and also experienced the ancient ruins of Lulan, Ye Wuchen replied. The 4 Li Doin came because of a bet. They used the ancient ruins of Lulan as a place for comparison. However, it seems that it was a draw. I heard that Li Doin was unwilling to do so. The ruins were valued by others. Comrade. Yes. Ye Wuchen nodded. Seeing Ye Wuchen's arm, Li Doin was at the peak of his method, and he also got the weapon, only that he broke Ye Wuchen's arm and did not kill him, and the treasure was not captured. At this time, these people dared to come to the deserted city directly, and they arrogantly faced Li Daoqing. Their courage was too great. So, this fact has nothing to do with the princess, Ye Wachan said honestly. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes looked at Ye Wachan. He and Jian Shu of Fuyun Janzong felt a little different from him. That person said before thinking about it, and then he said yes, it turned out to be Li Daoqing. Liu Shenyu pouted and chuckled, and said, so you really don't know what army to join yet. We don't know the troops in the eastern wasteland yet, Ye Wachan said. Then Liu Guo, I am willing to join the competition. Liu Shenyu smiled with a smile, it was beautiful and touching, said, and now, I seem to have some advantages. In the distance, Ye Fusion glanced over there, and happened to see Liu Shenyu smiling with a smile, as the name implies, Shenyu Lo Yan, he looked at Ye Wachan with a smile and couldn't see it. He is a master. It seemed that he was worried in vain, and Ye Wachan seemed to be hiding it. Converting his thoughts, Ye Fusion looked at the statues in front of him. Relying on other people's strength is imprint, unreliable, and only when he is strong can he face everything calmly. He was confident in the ruins, namely his battlefield. For this, he has been confirmed many times in the ancient world. There are many people in this area, and every statue is very strange. For example, a statue in front of Ye Fusion's eyes, like a fire god, is surrounded by a fiery red breath, from which he can feel the scorching flames and willpower. A statue next to him was just the opposite, containing a strong icy atmosphere. As soon as it approached, it gave off a chilling feeling. In addition, there are other attribute statues. There is even a statue like a sword body, which is thrown by the sword, showing a very sharp breath. The people in this area are very strong. They all looked at Ye Fusion with some interest. He also wants to understand the statue here. These statues are not accessible to anyone. Liu Shenyu also seemed to notice Ye Fusion here, and he said to Ye Wachan, the statues are dangerous. Do you want to remind him? How dangerous is it? Ye Wachan was curious. People who are not princes are not allowed to watch, otherwise they will be miserable. Liu Shenyu looked at Ye Wachan. No problem. Ye Wachan was very calm. Liu Shenyu looked at him with a strange look. This child of book is also the owner of Wanghu Qiyun. Actually, I am the worst of the three of us. Ye Wachan said to Liu Shenyu. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes looked down. Ye Wachan, the fifth method realized Wanghu Qiyun, two statues of King Hu appeared on the stone wall of Jingshan. He said he was the worst of the three. So, what are the talents of the self-proclaimed, book boy, and so-called, guardian? I have seen many sword repairs in Fuyun Janzong, all of them are full of arrogance. A simple sword repair like yours is rare. Liu Shenyu laughed. This is not humility. Ye Wachan shook his head, looked into his eyes, and said solemnly, it's not just me. The top forces in the East Wasteland are very proud that no one is better than them. There are not many top arrogants in the world. Liu Shenyu saw Ye Wachan's serious tone. Mei Mei looked into his eyes. Donghang in top Tianzhou, no one is more extraordinary than Ye Fusion and the rest of his life. Ye Wachan's words were a bit too confident and arrogant. However, when chatting with him, Ye Wachan didn't seem to be an arrogant person, so what exactly caused him to say such arrogant words? Are you really confident in Ye Fusion and the rest of your life? Fuyun Janzong Li Doin, in fact, he is not the top Tianzhou in the eastern wasteland. Liu Shenyu said, Ye Wachan and Li Doin have fought. I know, otherwise I won't be hurt by me. Ye Wachan calmly said, Li Doin, as far as talent is concerned, is completely unqualified to compare with them. Liu Shenyu's beautiful eyes stared at the figure in the distance, and for the first time there was a wave in my heart. Is Ye Wachan that extraordinary?